How's it, everybody? Another episode, mate. Person wants to be the brains, right? The brains is a separate affair, right? What I'm saying is, this episode is to make rules that people will follow. Well, I mean, you've got something horrible, right? Something that doesn't exist, not at the bitter end. The bitter end is 600 million people dead. If it's about one person, you're asking too much. Well, you're asking somebody that knows it shouldn't exist. Well, then this episode is about whether we should bother with this thing, but not this episode. This episode is something else. Um, well, I mean, okay, um, it's the bitter end, right? The bitter end is horrible, but like a lot of things is horrible, mate. But instead of trying to be horrible, love your people, love your soldiers. Don't talk about something that doesn't exist. Well, this person is confused, right? At the bitter end, the bitter end is too difficult. It's too horrible. Why you try to do something that's impossible when something is throwing everything? There's no even stomach. A stomach is all you have. You should be lucky if you got a stomach. Well, it's a bit of comedy. Well, isn't that the ultimate comedy, right? You mistaking a harmless African for a weapon or something, which is the bitter end, right? Which possibly is another episode. So we're gonna talk about the economic struggle, how the bitter end was horrible. The person is deluded, confused. In the first place, that's what you'll do, but not this episode. This episode is to make rules that they'll follow. Well, it's the bitter end. After that, probably there's zero people, which means there's something watching people, which is what I'm trying to tell you. There's something watching people, right? And that's what I'm talking about. They listening. So this thing is more serious. More, I can hear that sound, which possibly you'll say, what is that sound? Not this episode. It's not about revenge. It's not about trying to hurt people. Well, this is the thing with you. It's all junk. Junk you can't take in the next world. The next world is when your problems start. In the next world, you think it doesn't exist. The next world is inevitable, right? You're a human. You've got a soul, but not at the bitter end. The bitter end when probably everyone's guilty. There's no stomach, so at least that's funny. Well, in the first place, you're asking somebody with brains, right? You know everything about me. I know everything about you. Everybody's got family. Everybody's got friends. But you asking somebody that knows it's dead people. That's what I was trying to tell you in the first place, right? In the first place, it's predictable. The first place, they don't understand English. But this episode is like a job. Well, that's my job. My job is supposed to do that, not the mind. The mind only a ghost. Well, I mean, let's be realistic. It's the bitter end. The bitter end. How many times is it horrible? Just say it's all junk. It's all junk, mate. Junk nobody wants. Because okay, mankind is useless. But is mankind useless? Okay, it's horrible. But I mean, what would you do? Would you be horrible or would you love your people? Maybe that's why in the bitter end they're probably saying what happened. We're not that stupid, mate. That is what I'm talking about. Do you see what I'm trying to say? The place is not a safe place, right? It's the bitter end, right? This person is dead already. They're worried about skinny white girls. Slums of India, Nigeria are easily beatable. The universe is amazing, right? Life is amazing. Well then, if you know anything about anybody, not at the bitter end. The bitter end, um, the bitter end is when you need to Think of the economics. Well, then, okay, it's horrible, right? But what about for African people? What about for colored people? How can you even talk about something so horrible to somebody who's got children also? Somebody who's guilty. Okay, if life is not important, not this episode. This episode is just trying to get back to some sort of reality. But in order to come to reality, you need something for people, right? Because you're not admitting it's a one shot life. One shot. In that life, I'm coming from that life, of course you're going to die. Smoking that shit, you end up hurt. Are you deaf? Not this episode. This episode is trying to prove whether the thing is dangerous. Okay, the police are useless. But are gangs useless? They're not useless. Not this episode. That means you like us. You like us, you know what I mean? This episode is not only gonna be clear in your mind, I can handle that. What I can't handle is at the bitter end, somebody trying to start something horrible when you've got children to look after, which possibly they don't understand, right? So this episode will clear your mind. Well, before everybody sees the truth is not always the best option. Well, I mean, think about it, right? Does it exist? So if it doesn't exist, what would you do? Would you make an episode for yourself or for your people? Which possibly at the bitter end, of course, is horrible. The bitter end, the bitter end, mate, is when the person is trying gimmicks, mate. He's trying to con people. You can't con somebody if it's all junk. It's all junk. You're asking somebody that's also guilty of this thing, somebody that didn't even think this person is going to come with nonsense like that. Okay, the person is afraid. Afraid of what? What are they afraid of? But not this episode. This episode is trying to prove people are innocent. Some people should be let out of prison, and everyone's guilty. That's why I'm trying to tell you: ground yourself, learn about your enemy, learn about the world, or at least learn about where you live. That way, you can see that world is inevitable, right? But that world is horrible, right? So not this episode. This episode is some sort of agreement, right? You make rules. They'll follow the rules. You make the rules, but don't break the rules again, or try to do something that doesn't exist, which will never work out. But this episode is going to teach you health benefits. Okay, the person is dangerous, right? So let me think about it, right? There's nothing to think about. It's the bitter end. So the bitter end is horrible, mate. You relying on a gangster that's been through thousands of things, somebody that's also guilty. The right thing to do is not be horrible, because you've got to run away, you've got to retreat. They've got more technology than us, while they've got DJ Slaydem. It's just a game. If you want to be big time, it's no different from the small time, but obviously to make a difference. You see what I mean? They throw in everything. What I can't understand is, if you had an opportunity, right? Well, then opportunities failed, right? Society has failed. There's stuff in the water. The thing is broken. So the person is talking about something horrible, especially somebody who's got children. So it must have been horrible, right? That's what I was trying to say. There's a secret society. Something's watching people. And you fascinated with this world is not so bad. The world is fascinating. It can't always be horrible. Well, it's only junk that everyone realizes is bullshit. Well, I mean, you've got your episodes, right? episodes, what you call that, right? The person is saying, how can you have children? It's like asking somebody, why should I smoke that shit? Which is not what we're talking about. It's not about blaming people or blaming the government. Government is too stupid. The other ones are too stupid. They probably broke, but not this episode. This episode is something for everybody. Just in case somebody thinks you're not doing your job, instead of trying to um, interfere with my job, then I won't interfere with you, which is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the monster, right? The monster is too dangerous. Well, obviously it's dangerous. It's copying us. Everything you fantasizing about, it's doing. It's probably come to a point now. It's the bitter end. Well, you can imagine the bitter end. What's the difference with the thing? There's no difference. You can't run away. It's all junk. The day you say that is junk, I'm not with this stuff on TikTok and whatever is impossible. What I'm saying is right. You got one life. So this is for what you're asking for. You're saying who you talking to, but not this episode. Well, if it exists, what I think is this world is a fascinating place. It's amazing, but it's billions of years old. So this thing probably is horrible, right? It's watching people. So probably it wants to hurt us. But I mean, not this episode. This episode is who would even want to do that in the first place? So obviously, the person, you got an opportunity, right? But should you pounce on the opportunity, then how will you run away? If the thing's got technology is more advanced, then it could be there's you spoiled for choice. But even if you're spoiled for choice, there's no technology like DJ Slaydem. You know what I mean? Well, that's what I mean. You've got all these excuses. The system has failed. The government has failed. Now you're going after one person. It doesn't work like that. I have to help you in this life or the next life because life is precious. Well, it's an adventure, right? It doesn't matter who it is, right? Finally, it's happened. Is not understanding. Finally, they must have checked. Hey, this guy is talking sense. It doesn't make sense. Well, then, instead of being horrible, love your people. Maybe they won't join the shadow, but not this episode. This episode is not politics or something. It's just proving if they're mad or not. They can't be so mad. That means they're innocent. While you're asking somebody that shouldn't even be alive, somebody that knows it's horrible, but not this episode. Obviously, it's horrible for those people and us. You're avoiding the monster. You're not the only person that's avoiding the monster. The whole universe is avoiding the monster. Avoiding the monster is allowed, but make rules. Don't ask somebody why you angry. Why you asking somebody that's guilty at the bitter end for a new beginning. It's like asking somebody, does this thing exist? Does it exist? Is another episode. But a few minutes on technology while you hassling the whole world. You stay with your group no matter what happens. You see what I mean? They throw in everything, and you come in with some sort of job. You're not working overtime. You see what I try to tell you? The thing exists. People are too listening to TikTok, which seems if that's the servant, then who's the master? Well, they can all get lost. But this is for everybody. Just a few minutes will do a lot of good. Then your blood will circulate. Then you can realize I'm not talking rubbish. Well, then if he knows everything, right? That means they're listening, right? But I think they're not. It doesn't exist. Well, if it existed, you wouldn't even be trying to even live, right? Or the mind is a ghost, right? Because the mind somewhere in the world is an army of zombies, right? And we live in this world with stupid, but it's not so stupid. It's just this episode is for groceries, right? Which you're not understanding. Instead of going after young people and those criminals, Plan, learn, strategize, research. Try to come up with some exit plan or something for everybody, because that's inevitable. It's not inevitable for me. Well, you die if you lose your girlfriend. You die if you lose your friends. The pain I'm going through is pain for. I said I want to live for eternity. That means you like us. You like us, you can also hear that thing, which means it's something horrible, right? But everything is horrible. Now there's zero people. You know what I mean? You're asking for something that's impossible, but not for everybody. Why would you worry about somebody, especially somebody that's horrible, right? That obviously, instead of being part of this thing, which doesn't exist, is live or something, which you've got to keep telling yourself it's junk. That's the day you've beaten everybody. You want to be number one. Number one is taken. You want to be number three. I'm number five in the universe. Instead of being selfish, which you could be selfish, right? Or you could be a horrible person, which probably doesn't understand. So then, what's the point, right, of all the hard work? But not this episode. This episode is not that. It's just those things work, right? If it even existed, it doesn't mean that they're famous. It could be a billion things. It happens. I mean, you've got millions of kids from India. You've got millions of kids around the world. But something's watching people. So then you've got to think to yourself, okay, something's watching people, right? So if you lose discipline, then you're lost. Because you've got no groceries, nothing. Lock down the world, cut the power, flood the world. It's never over. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Even if you die, it's never over. Wouldn't you like to just die right now? Get out of my bum and do some overtime or something. Wouldn't you like to get cancer or something right now? Sell your bum or something. It's how you sell yourself. It doesn't mean it's confidence, but it doesn't mean it's over, right? Well then, if you're so useless, then it doesn't make sense. Then why are you asking a pirate also? Well, you're supposed to be a pirate, right? Well then, it's never over. Well then, that means you like us. That means they throw in everything at you. Which, think about it. Okay. If you're at the bitter end, you can't face the truth. The truth is too hard for somebody to face. You don't tell somebody to die for junk. Junk also, that everyone's realized is junk. And people are saying, all you do is flood the world. So what sort of person is this? The same person that you is asking to defend a world that's full of junk. Now you fascinated with this stuff. Is not as junk as the shit we have to go through. Which possibly a lot of people are saying it's that part of the world. Don't avoid the monster. There's other things you can do. You're supposed to be a gangster, right? Gangs have numbers. So if you're by yourself, it doesn't mean you're by yourself. It just means there could be something watching you. That it doesn't work, right? Because the ancient world is paying in gold, right? So how are you supposed to go to sleep? How can you go to sleep? You see what I mean? So they're listening, right? So what did the person do, right? Flood the world. Then what will happen after that? Obviously, vampires and things will come flying out, which is what I'm trying to tell you. In the first place, face the monster. Well, not this episode. This episode is just like something for everybody. Well, you're depending on this human stuff. Is it so stupid? Think about it, right? You've got all these girls, all these things, right? Do they seem so stupid? Well, if it's so stupid, why are you copying one person? Is not so stupid, but not this episode. This episode is for the person that's fascinated with this, right? But doesn't understand the modern world. The modern world is that far from the ancient world. But if it is an empire, not an empire of bullshit, because what's the point of trying to hurt your own people? Well, then that's a level people must have been scared. They must have said, nah. But afterwards, at the bitter end, well, the bitter end, probably the person doesn't understand. It doesn't exist. You want to look like a leader, but you're not a leader, or you want to be something you fantasizing, right? You fantasizing the ability of the Black Panther. So then, if something's watching people, then it's dangerous, right? Which you need to take serious. But if you can't live with DJ Slaydem, while you're asking somebody that's seen something, somebody who knows it's a dead person, and a secret society, somebody that's living the horrible thing at the bitter end. The bitter end is a new beginning. The pain is too much, but that's all right. This is an episode for the monster, which what I think, uh, there's too many. There's too many. Those people have come to a reality. They check in. Hey, this thing don't exist. So if it doesn't exist, you need to be fascinated, which only a trillionaire can do. But any little bit helps. You can't listen to that thing. Life is important, and if you can't listen to DJ Slaydem, then you can't listen to the greatest thieves, which possibly don't understand, but not this episode. Well, I mean, you're asking somebody that's been through the thing you're talking about at the bitter end. The bitter end, um, clear your mind, you know what I mean? Because the bitter end, not the bitter end, but I guess what's the greatest fear? The greatest fear is upon us. You're asking somebody, I'm living somewhere, I've got to be the government, I got to be the person. The greatest fear is upon us. While you've got to go to sleep, is the problem with those people. That's what I told you in the first place. Those people, they're gonna do something, and that's what I told you. Blaming yourself, but you're avoiding the monster. It's easily done to face the monster, right? But it's not so easy. If you got all those consequences, then you still need to go to sleep. Then anything can happen while you're sleeping. Well, you've got somebody who's avoiding the monster, somebody who's throwing it at everybody, and you're asking someone at the bitter end. The bitter end is impossible. Even if you could do something, not at the bitter end. The bitter end, when you're going to sleep, well then, what's somebody going to do? Do you see what I mean? At the bitter end, not at the bitter end. The bitter end, it could be some sort of something dangerous. But imagine at the bitter end, and now you want to listen. Nadas, bro. Not at the bitter end. You need more research, planning, more stuff. Because I know it's not over. Well, then you're asking somebody. I'm trying to tell you, like a normal person, not at the bitter end. The bitter end. The bitter end, mate. The bitter end. That's the problem with those people. They're avoiding the monster, right? And now at the bitter end, when the monster's so dangerous, trying to defend. Not one of those people, mate. Not at the bitter end. Well, at the bitter end is pointless. At the bitter end, the 600 million people dead. It's got more technology than us. It's got the capability to fly like an aeroplane. It's doing neuroscience, which is why I'm paying for that. Well, I mean, you're avoiding the monster. Avoiding the monster at the bitter end is a mistake throughout the world. You've just got to come to a point and say it's all junk. Well, then you've won. Well, then if it's one person, that's stupid. Not at the bitter end. The bitter end, don't even be surprised. Don't be surprised if something horrible happens, which is what I'm trying to tell you. It's not a vacation, mate. It's probably some sort of book and some sort of sick white person that don't understand. If you are racist, not at the bitter end. The bitter end is a fantastic journey, right? You're gonna say who you talking to, right? Who you talking to? Go on TikTok, go on Instagram. The brain is a computer, but the next few minutes will clear your mind. Well, only a ghost can do that, or some sort of thing that shouldn't exist. At the bitter end, you're asking too much of somebody. You've got to be realistic, right? You throw in everything at the bitter end. Um, the bitter end, I don't know what to do. Something's watching people. Now you're asking the same person you hurt like that is all right, mate. But you need to understand something is watching people, not at the bitter end. The bitter end, don't even be surprised. If the things coming out, it doesn't exist. You complaining about a stomach that doesn't exist. Well, that's the greatest comedy, right? But is it funny? Well, in the first place, that's what you do, right? You won't worry about junk like this. Well, then it's the bitter end. You know what I mean? The bitter end is horrible, mate. But not this episode. This episode is trying to prove some people are innocent. That something horrible exists. The sooner you face the monster, then it can't grow. Don't you understand? You can't have our technology with something at the bitter end. The bitter end, everyone's got children. Everyone's got responsibility. The bitter end is the best time because the bitter end is probably the worst time. But if it is so good, right? It's not so good because in that world, mate, is this far away. You know what I mean? You got the doomsday clock. That world, that world, you can enter that world, but you can't come back. Which is another episode, right? Because think about it, right? The person doesn't understand. It's the bitter end. People are trying to tell you it's the bitter end. So you've got your episodes. The person is talking about gods and things. I'm thinking, yeah, the bitter end. Yeah, it's the bitter end, mate. Jesus, mate. I got kids and stuff, mate. Not at the bitter end. Try that on the boss, mate. At the bitter end. Nice try. Which is alright, mate. The bitter end. The bitter end is like the bitter end of pornography or something. Some obese penis, a black dick or something. Some person trying to be deluded. At the bitter end. The bitter end, you better have technology, mate. Can't rely on mine unless you're going to smoke. Shit. At the bitter end. The bitter end is impossible. If it doesn't exist, right? So unless the person is putting poison in every liquor store, which possibly doesn't exist, well, it's not that clever. It's not that clever. That's the problem with you. You think they're clever. That's not clever. What's clever for you? It doesn't exist, right? So then probably what's happened is probably checking where you talking, right? You know what I mean? Where you talking is doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Because the way I see it, not at the bitter end. The bitter end, it's like asking somebody, have you got children or something? So at the bitter end, what you asking me at the bitter end, mate? Something that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. This episode is about the economics, right? English, technology, and in just a few minutes, mate. Eyesight, mate. By the eye, mate. Something's watching people. Something's doing something. Now you want to come at the bitter end. The bitter end is the joy, you know what I mean? Everybody will join the shadow. Because think about it, okay? Let's say who you talking to. Not at the bitter end. You're going from something horrible, then something horrible you're avoiding. Now at the bitter end, you try to deny the bitter end. The bitter end is too horrible. It's too difficult. People have come to another understanding. In the first place, you should do that. You're supposed to love your people. But if you can't love your people, then what would you do? Something that's watching people. You check, I know it's something that doesn't exist. Well, you're asking somebody who can double check. Why would you want to double check when people check the bitter end? That world, that world, your problems are starting. That world exists, right? But at the bitter end is no problem. Well, maybe that's what the thing is confused. Well, okay, it's painful, it hurts. Well, then that means you like us. It's hurting, it's painful, and it's the bitter end. The bitter end is you asking too much. Well, the thing with you, you're asking a criminal, right? A criminal, right? Somebody who's guilty, right? So then, the way I see it, what would you do? Not at the bitter end. The bitter end. Say, the bitter end. I have to search you, you know what I mean? Check, it's the bitter end. I'm going to search you, mate. It's the bitter end, mate. You know what I mean? Check, I'm going to search you now, mate. It's the bitter end, mate. I can do that myself. Oh, you know what I mean? It's the bitter end, mate. Well, not at the bitter end, but that's another episode, mate. Well, obviously, you've got hundreds and millions of people that are depending on the brains, which is another episode, mate. If only you could do that in the first place, which is what a normal person would do, which I'm paying not to think about. Well, some people want to live, some people want to have a fight, so it's the bitter end. It's a different type of fight club, mate. But I'm working on something else, not in the bitter end. In the last few minutes, what have we spoken about? Economics, English, technology, and in the first place, you're supposed to love your members, right? Not try to do something like that in the bitter end. The bitter end, you're supposed to escape. You're not supposed to do that in the bitter end. Not in the bitter end. You got a memory problem. And you're repeating yourself. This thing can fly like an aeroplane. It's the size of a mountain. You're not listening to the subliminal message. In the bitter end, you're asking too much, mate. I'm the government, mate. Not the bitter end, mate. Something can fly like an aeroplane. In the bitter end, there's another world. Let me think about the bullshit on TikTok. You escalated the Russia war. It's your fault, mate. The bitter end is the new beginning. Well, you're asking somebody at the bitter end, it can fly like an aeroplane. It's watching people. It can do something like that. In the bitter end, well, at least that's funny. Now you got children and stuff now saying I know everything about you. Check in the bitter end, what you know about me, which doesn't exist, right? In the bitter end, which probably is throwing everything, right? But that's what I mean. The bitter end is a new beginning because death is inevitable, right? So then do it. You know what I mean? Then you've won because now it knows it's junk. But that's another episode. Well, you've got episodes on TikTok. Somebody's trying to do something, could be my daughter, but is not admitting. Is asking somebody that's looking like one of these criminals, which possibly it doesn't exist, right? So if it doesn't exist, then maybe it's afraid of something else, something that shouldn't exist, not in the bitter end. Everybody will join the shadow, mate. Check, it's the bitter end. Remember what you're doing, mate. I good with my girlfriend, huh? Now you coming at the bitter end. You should have thought about that, eh? Check, what's that? It's got. I'm joining the thing. The thing can fly like Superman, mate. At least that's funny, mate. Got some sort of way to live for eternity. What are you doing while I'm sleeping? It's the bitter end, mate. Should have thought about that, eh? But at the bitter end, obviously everybody will join the thing. Because we're living in the bitter end. Not at the bitter end. The bitter end, are you mad or something, mate? Come hassle somebody with children, mate. The bitter end. The bitter end is not our problem. The bitter end is not anybody's problem. Not this episode. It's just to prove whether we're mad or not. Whether we're going to make a balloon and float out of here finally, mate. Not at the bitter end. The bitter end, don't expect anything. Well, I'm trying to tell you the truth. At least that's funny, mate. Say, what you looking at? Say, it's the bitter end. Don't ask me who's the bitter end. Asking somebody that's telling the truth. Not at the bitter end when everybody's guilty. Not at the bitter end, but that's another episode. It's like a job. A job you need to do overtime. Well, you've got to earn your benefit. Well, obviously the person don't understand. It's the bitter end. The bitter end, mate. Don't expect anything to exist. Well, that thing exists, right? Well, it's the bitter end. Don't expect something but a ghost or something. You live in something that doesn't exist. Now you're asking somebody at the bitter end, why would I want to smoke that shit in the first place? In the first place, it has to be the water. Well, not at the bitter end. Well, that means it was listening, right? So that means it's dangerous. It's horrible. So, but what I'm confused. Uh, Not at the bitter end. The bitter end. The bitter end is pointless. You rather enjoy yourself. Well, I mean, there's 600 million people dead. Now you're trying to con somebody. You want me to double check? Must I double check? Yeah, but not at the bitter end, mate. The bitter end. What would you do? Would you do something horrible? Then how will you run away? Make rules, mate. Otherwise, you can't jump on my spaceship, mate. It's the bitter end, mate. I'll check. Where are you trying to go, mate? You could be not at the bitter end, mate. The bitter end. Death is inevitable. So if it's inevitable, life is an adventure. But okay, the bitter end is horrible. But that's another episode. Episode that you're doing in the first place, it doesn't have to make sense. Well, something is watching people. You're avoiding the monster. The monster's finally struck. Master checked, hey, this guy. Something wrong with this guy, mate. Well, it's the bitter end. Well, the bitter end. Is it going to make a difference? All the person will do flood the world, right? But at the bitter end, you're avoiding the monster. You've avoided the monster too long. The army of darkness is too strong. That's why so many people are joining the shadow. Well, it's the bitter end. You're asking somebody that's got children, somebody that's got a responsibility. At the bitter end, you'll be lucky to look like this, mate. Well, the bitter end, uh, you must be mad. Not at the bitter end, but not this episode. This episode is because you got episodes, right? So if you avoid the monster, okay, it's a horrible place. Okay, it's horrible, but not at the bitter end. You're supposed to do the right thing. That's what I'm talking about. At the bitter end. Because you know the thing is you asking somebody at the bitter end. After all of that, I check at the bitter end. We conning, mate. Government is a bomb hole. What's going on, mate, at the bitter end? But not this episode. We've touched a lot of subjects. Pace by pace. Don't be greedy. Don't be too horrible, mate. Otherwise, you can't retreat. What's something that's more technologically advanced? It's on top of you. You can't rely on the same person that you've hurt. Because as far as I'm concerned, it could be my daughter. It could be children who done that, mate. But you don't want to listen. It's all junk. Junk that probably everyone's realized is the bitter end. The bitter end, you can't jump on somebody's ship. No, check. It's the bitter end. Where you going, mate? It's the bitter end. You the person who is the bitter end. Should have thought about that in the first place, eh? That's what I'm talking about. It's the bitter end. Mm. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Whether it exists or not. But that's another episode. Well, you've got episodes of that shit. You've got episodes of that shit which possibly don't understand. It's the bitter end. The bitter end, mate. You're dreaming about it, right? But not this episode. This episode is for groceries, things you're not thinking about. Well, that's the job of the brains, right? So don't be greedy. Pace yourself. Life is an adventure. An adventure that probably is all over the universe, but not at the bitter end. At the bitter end, obviously, it exists. But okay, we touched a lot of subjects. But instead of trying to be horrible, if you can't be reasonable, then you can't be fighting with something that doesn't exist, not at the bitter end. But that's another episode of the Wasp Nest.